Welcome to another episode of 90 Minutes of Wisdom, a channel dedicated to helping you expand your knowledge and develop a more successful and peaceful mind. Today's guest is a communication and marketing professional. He can be heard on many radio stations, including TSN 690 and CJAD 800, where he is the host of Weekend Game Plan. He is like a walking encyclopedia on sports and is the founder of ExposNation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to bringing baseball back to Montreal. He's a longtime personal friend and just generally a great guy. I want you all to welcome Matthew Ross. Welcome, Matthew.
Hey, Andrew. Good to be here.
Right on, right on. How you doing today?
I'm good. You can see the eclectic background here. I'm in one of my daughter's rooms here in the house. A little hectic in quarantine, so all the general spaces are busy with all kinds of stuff. So yeah, it's not your polished background like some of your other guests.
Yeah. Oh no, that's good, dude. It works. It works. And right now it works. So what I would like to do is we're gonna spend a very small portion like dedicated to the situation that we're in, because I'm so like talked out of it. I'm so bored of it. And in the future, I find that the minute like we're out of this COVID thing, no one's going to want to hear about it again. We're still in it. And I don't want to hear about it. So we're going to go really, really quick. I was going to ask you a question. I was looking up stuff on you on the internet and looking up, trying to do some my homework. And I noticed from 2013, a short video clip of you talking about parenting. And I
really?
Yeah, there's like a 1.5-minute clip of you, January 2013, talking about how pre-kids, it was like a chore going to the hardware store to get something.
Yeah.
And then after kids, it's like, oh my God, like it's like a pleasure. It's like a treat. A hardware store.
Right.
Your jacket's already half on, your shoes are like untied, and you're on your way, right? You're on your way. So
yeah, it's funny. I vividly remember that now. And I've last summer I got the opportunity to try stand-up comedy. I'm not a naturally funny guy to do it like some comedians, like local comedians in Montreal, named Joey Elias comes to mind. As a guy who could just go up on stage, a Robin Williams type. He can just go up on stage, no material, and just be funny for an hour. That's not me. I had to kind of diligently write a bunch of stuff, and so I got to do it last summer. And locally here for I don't know, 80 people, 100 people, something like that. And I was the host of the comedy night, so I didn't necessarily have to do a long set, just a bunch of jokes here and there, and it went pretty well. But it's funny you bring that up, because it's totally something I should have put in there. It's so true. It's so true.
Yeah, that's it. So I'm wondering, just on that subject. So we have that, which was like set over 7 years ago. So what would you say now? How does it feel now? How's life? How's life now?
I have an almost 12-year-old and a 9-year-old.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So yeah, I mean, it's certainly in this situation, it's challenging. Anyone will tell you when you have daughters, it's there's a lot more drama, a lot more emotion involved than perhaps boys who maybe are a little rougher. They just want get that energy out. And it's a challenge. It's a challenge. My wife and I have to figure out every day the balance between doing a little bit of schoolwork just to keep their minds sharp during pandemic, and trying to drag them away from screens and get them outside and stuff. So it's definitely not easy in this situation. It's more when it gets hectic in the house and you need a bit of a break, you don't mind doing the odd chore or two outside of the house.
That's great. That's great. Awesome. So yeah, I wanted to ask you about many things, but to start off, just about.
By the way, I'm going to interrupt you and kind of just go off script a little bit and just say that in terms of these, I've seen a couple of them already that you've put together, and I just want to congratulate you on starting the series. And I just for the viewers, a little bit on Andrew. I've known Andrew for many years, and the one thing that you'll see on camera is exactly how he's been off of camera for as long as I knew him. He's always been somebody who was introspective and very, very calm. It didn't matter what the situation is. I don't think I've ever heard you yell ever. And so, when you started this kind of journey of giving wisdom and being somebody that could be an inspiration to others, it made a lot of sense to me when I saw it. It kind of just said, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." Because I always wondered, how is he staying cool in this situation? So just wanted to throw that in before we delved in a little more.
Thanks, man. That's super kind of you. I really appreciate it. Yeah, we've been through so much. I mean, we've known each other since we were
Single digits.
7, yeah, like 8, something like that, like a ridiculous long time. So we've seen all each other's victories and failures and ups and downs through life. But thank you. Yeah, that's very kind of you. Yeah, I had everything kind of set up, and I just started before all this situation happened. I launched my YouTube channel just in March. I think it was March 15th or something. The timing, I had my studio set up and everything was there, and I just started right before, and it was just the timing worked out really, really, really well. And of course, yes, in this time, I'm super happy. I have, everything set up, and I'm able to assist people. Right, that's all it is. Everything to do a minute and a half video takes me 3 hours to do it. To do a minute and a half video, which is crazy, but you just do it to help people. You're like, what can I share? So I look at always like, how can I serve people, right? And we all do it. I mean, you serve people on the radio all the time, right? Bringing them your knowledge, your unique view, your perspective. And I think that's the thing of community. No one man is an island. To help other people and to remember that even though we're in isolation now, is to have that point of view or that mentality of how can I help myself, help my family, help my community, and serve others. And trying to look at that
Right.
all the time. So yeah, that's
Right. Yeah, it makes sense. And now, especially in these times, you have more of a captive audience maybe than you would have had previously. I just saw on LinkedIn, an ad agency owner, a friend of mine, posted how it's the perfect time to advertise on social media because everybody's pouring on, trying to occupy their brain, trying to escape a little bit, trying to look for things to get out of mental kind of doldrums.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect example. I know that video game they're just talking on CNBC today about video game ads and how that's super good. Like for Zynga, they're like, yeah, like everyone's playing these little games, so have your ad on this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Just imagine if all this happened and the internet went down. There was no more
Right.
internet, right? It would be something completely different. Like we have Netflix and we have Crave and we have a multitude of different ways to entertain ourselves, phones and computers and websites, and it's endless. So like we're all soft, we're all being babies, like, oh, it's so hard. No, it's not. Okay, going to war is hard, getting shot in the face is hard. Staying at home,
Right.
yeah, it's got its challenges, but your best friend isn't getting blown up by a grenade. So let's just be realistic. We're soft. we're soft people. I think that they're distractions as well, right? So I think it's a time where we want to look and say, inwardly, right, and say like, how can I develop myself? How can I gain that thing? Like inner peace is, the ultimate thing, right? If you can be at peace and happy, what else do you want, right? So I think that that's one of the things that it's kind of there's a certain amount of the population where alcohol sales have gone way, way up, as we all know.
Right.
So there's a certain amount of population that's gone and looking for answers at the bottom of the bottle, right? And there's
Yeah. Yeah.
other people I think that are able to say, hey, you know what, like without all this stuff, to take a break of that routine and those habits that they're going to work and doing this and doing that, and just to stop for a second and look. I find it's a great time to meditate or look inwardly or reevaluate where you are, and personally but also environmentally, right? Like we should be doing so much more. I just see it as a wake up call. If we
Mm.
could, it's overpopulation. Things like this are going to happen. It's not going to be, it's happened before and it's going to happen again. And I think that we got to be more socially responsible and environmentally responsible. And hopefully that's a lot of good will come out of this. Usually downturns, anything that's bad, something really good comes out of it. I've noticed in my life and in different things. So let's see,
Yeah.
let's see where this brings us. And so how is it being a sports announcer with no sports?
Well, that's a challenge. I don't know if you've kind of paid attention to all that stuff, but it's all about, top 10 lists and greatest of all time that, and classic games of this, and every day there's a report of a league trying to make preparations to come back, and it's just all of it to me seems trivial compared to the day to day of what people are going through. But that said, this is the first time in my lifetime. I mean, from the age of 5 or 6, I was reading the sports section every day. Typically, sports has always been an escape. It's always been something that you wake up in the morning, you eat your cereal or your breakfast or whatever, and you're flipping through ESPN, or whether it's NBA news or NFL news or baseball, hockey, or whatever. And that's not there right now. I can't remember, always in pools, right? You always got your teams and stuff. And, with common friends of ours, we're always talking about our pools, and you don't have that now. I was thinking about it the other day. I can't remember the last time I opened up my scoreboard app and looked at the latest score of the night. So that's all gone. It's a completely different way of life. People say that, oh, this is going to show that how much you miss sports. But for some, it's going to be an evolution of, well, I don't need sports, or I'm going to use more pop culture stuff to occupy my mind, or things like this, like your path you're taking on here. So it's going to be interesting to see how popular all of these things are when any semblance of life actually returns. I don't know about you, but I can't conceive of a stadium filled with people. I just can't even, how is that going to work? I mean, it's crazy. I know the big news is that in Korea, they've resumed baseball, and ESPN inked a deal with Korean baseball, and they're showing Korean baseball at like 1 a.m. because they have nothing else to show, right? Or, and ESPN's talking about this, Bulls Jordan documentary from the docuseries in the late 90s because there's nothing else. But if you look on ESPN's YouTube channel, every single debate show, highlight show is all about Michael Jordan. And it's like, the guy stopped playing 20 years ago. It's just, we're in an unprecedented time for sports. And, for me, it was always a huge release, a huge, I'm a very competitive guy. I got a tattoo of the word, I don't know if you can see it, but of the word compete on my arm. And so it's like, how do I miss playing softball. I miss playing hockey. I miss playing basketball and all these things. And time I can try and spend outside. I have a basketball net for the kids, so I've been trying to shoot around and do things like that. But it's a huge void. You really have to adjust how life goes on.
Yeah, I mean, and then like when I did see that Korea, it's crazy, and they had like fake people in the stands with masks on. Like,
Right.
who was that? All like, who thought of
Cardboard
that?
cutouts.
Yeah, cardboard cutouts. And I was watching Trevor Noah's show, and he was like, "I hope they tell the announcer that like the audience is fake because someone gets like a home run and like a ball goes through their face or through like explode." Like, oh my god, what happened?
Right.
I don't know who came up with all that. That's insane. But like these kind of things, anyone that says kind of card readers, that says crystal ball, and that psychics, that say I could see the future, yeah. Okay, tell me someone that could predict that we'll be watching Korean baseball. If one
Right.
person, show me a video clip from 1 year ago where the psychic said we will all be watching Korean baseball, and Korean baseball only at 1 a.m. Like, if
Right.
show me that clip, and I'll pay her wwhatever to read my cards, like $1,000 for a card reading session, because that would be.
I saw a tweet the other day from a journalist who said that the local like lottery commission here, where you and I are based, is actually offering odds so you can bet on Korean baseball. And he was speculating as to which Canadian network provider would start covering these games. I mean, that's how much people miss watching competition. It's crazy.
Yeah, there was a draft. What was the draft a few weeks ago, and everyone was betting on the
Yeah,
betting
yeah.
on the
The
draft.
NFL draft went virtually, and it was the highest ratings in like a decade because there's literally nothing else to watch, and the human interest stories, because typically all these people gather in a Vegas or New York or whatever for the draft, and now everyone's at home, so every time they cut to a player who just got drafted, he's some of them in the past would be with their family, but now everybody was, so you got to see all these human interest stories and the reactions. People said the draft was better than normal. So that's some of the stuff that's come out. I saw today that the ESPN's advertising that they're the day that we're recording this here today, that tonight there's going to be a 3-hour show dedicated to the NFL schedule coming out. I mean, it's people are just like grasping at this point.
Grasping at straws. And to segue into that is that you're the founder of the nonprofit organization ExposNation. So you're just trying to bring baseball back to Montreal, which is amazing, and thank you for doing that, because having a sports team is always a great thing, and losing them was very painful. And we were talking, you and I, the other day, I think we were just chatting online about Expos home openers, how we used to skip school
Right.
and go to those Expos home openers, and how a friend of ours, Paul, jumped on the field, and yeah, that was hilarious.
That made the whole. I mean, the next day at high school, that's all anybody was talking about. It was crazy. He was like a legend after that.
It was a legend because they showed him on TSN at night. That's what made him right. He was on, like, look at this guy running the bases. It was hilarious.
He was in rough shape this day.
Yes, yes. So I was there next to him when he was telling us, he's like, man, I'm going to jump the field. And we're like, okay, sure, why not? And yeah, and he did. And yeah, he's tough as nails, that guy. But yeah, they wanted to leave an impression with him, that to make sure, a message, I should say, to make sure nobody else tried to do it again. So yeah,
Right.
I think they roughed him up a little bit. Tough guy, but yeah, he took a beating for doing that. But it was all worth it. Seeing himself on TSN, with an ice pack on his face, watching a cold beer. I mean, that's classic. That was hilarious. But yeah, you're trying to bring back the Expos, and now it's like, how does that work? Like, now it's like just sports in general. Like, you know what I mean? How, and like, have you just kind of put that on pause, or?
Well, I mean, just to kind of give you the genesis of all that, we after I think it was 2010, former Expo Andre Dawson got inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame, and then a former Expo, Warren Cromartie, started coming to town and talking about how baseball should be back here and all that kind of stuff. So he was kind of the pioneer of saying, hey, what about this market that had lost their team after '04? And so we kind of started with trying to just kind of create a fuss. So in July of 2013, we brought 1,000 fans to Toronto for a Blue Jay game to kind of make noise about the cause, and then it got a ton of attention, ESPN and every outlet in Canada. At the time, the Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, mentioned us, Justin Trudeau, the opposition leader, as well. So it really got a lot of fanfare. And then fast forward to the fall, October of 2013, Evenco, the promoter in Montreal, announced that there would be annual preseason games where the Blue Jays would come and play in Montreal beginning in spring of 2014. So yeah, we were really at the forefront of trying to help this market get noticed again by Major League Baseball for sports, and for having a team here. And then our mission kind of switched to combating misnomers about how the team ended up with no fans at the end, and why this market is still viable, and all these types of things. And so we started to work with the promoter annually to make sure people were in the stands. And then it developed into a wonderful situation where a local group stepped up, and now it's them that are heading it. And I'm just, we're just a grassroots organization that's here as a think tank, a grassroots organization to kind of, say, what do you guys need from us? And so then there was another group that popped up that does a lot of kind of alumni events for charity, called Expos Fest, and they've done amazing things. And so we've kind of handed it off, kind of like a relay race, and that's kind of been the interesting aspect to it all. And the local group, headed by Stephen Bronfman, who's the son of the founder of the Expos in the late '60s, Charles Bronfman, and so he's been the face of dealing with Major League Baseball and the market here. And so we've helped with things like when they needed to do surveys and focus groups, we've helped to promote that, and we've worked with them. And it's been really a great collaborative relationship. And we when Tim Raines got into the Baseball Hall of Fame, we brought a few buses to Cooperstown, New York, for the ceremonies. And that's, I mean, I could go down another tangent into the incredible experiences I was able to have behind the scenes with some of the legends of baseball on that trip. But so that's kind of where it came from and what we've done. And right now it's the Bronfman Group, and also a noteworthy individual there, Mitch Garber, another Montrealer who's the chairman of Cirque du Soleil and one of the minority owners of the new Seattle NHL franchise. So he's a part of this as well. And there's just a ton of wealthy individuals. The founder of Couche-Tard, convenience stores in Quebec, and just a lot of money and a lot of passion behind it. And so it's very, very encouraging to have been, you know, I guess one of the catalysts to the reawakening of it. To, now you fast forward, and the owner of the Tampa Bay Rays in Tampa, Florida, has said that they kind of have a deal in place where in a few years they'll start to split the franchise between Tampa and Montreal, where Montreal would have home games beginning in the summer, like in June. So Tampa, I guess, would be where the players would go for spring training starting in February, stay there until June, and then Montreal would have an outdoor, I guess, facility here in the city, and that's still ongoing. The local group has identified land, and I was one of the folks that spoke at the consultations for the land last year, where we presented a case as to why that land would be great for a stadium as opposed to other things that other individuals and groups wanted on that land. So it's been an interesting journey having started that kind of group, and I have other people that have helped along the way, and I have kind of a partner in a local artist, hip hop artist named Anakin Slade, who's done incredible work in a lot of hip hop songs about the cause and about the individuals, and he's really helped open doors as well with some of his passion and interviews and connections too. So it's been a really great journey.
Wow, man, that's amazing. I didn't know it's just so much bigger than just bringing back the Expos. It's something.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not someone who's dealing with Major League Baseball or anything like that. It's more supporting those that are in the know and that are doing the work now. But really, I mean, people ask me all the time, or they used to ask me all the time when we got started, why are you going through all this trouble? What's the point? And I would just say that at the time, and still to this day, I'm somebody who's in sports radio. I have a little bit of a platform. I have a background of PR and marketing, and I kind of just thought of when I was a kid, and my dad was a baseball fan, and his dad, and so that was the way I kind of bonded with my dad and his grandfather, and my grandfather rather. Whether it was listening to a radio on the back balcony, or I thought, it's the least I could do. If I have the opportunity to make even the slightest difference to try and help this situation, then that was where the genesis came from it. And fast forward to getting to know my favorite player of all time, Tim Raines, and on a personal level, and getting invited to behind the scenes in Cooperstown, New York, in July 2017. It's just incredible. I mean, there was a party. Typically, what happens when the players get inducted, there's thousands that come to an open field. But the night before, in the actual museum, the Cooperstown, New York, baseball museum, there's a private cocktail for the players. And so I'm literally walk into this thing. There's a parade of all the players, and then they all go into this private, event. And I walk in the door, and it's just like, oh, there's Ken Griffey Jr. and there's Wade Boggs and there's Hank Aaron sitting there, and it's just like, what is going on, And just some kid who started a little thing, and to go from sitting around saying, hey, we should probably try something, start something, try and get some attention for this cause, to a night like that.
Wow. Okay. Tell us some dirt, man. Tell us some crazy stuff, like who got drunk. Like, tell us some madness. I know I mean, you're.
Well, I will say that after the cocktail, there was a private party for Tim Raines at a museum in Cooperstown, and it was by invitation only. A lot of former teammates, a lot of noteworthy individuals. I think even the commissioner, Rob Manfred, stopped by for a couple minutes. Frank Thomas walks in from the White Sox, and a teammate of Tim Raines' time in Chicago, and all these crazy, individuals.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, as you said, it's nuts. These guys who you've seen, and you're like, it's just unattainable superstars in a certain way, right? You have like cards, like baseball cards of them, and see them on TV. And then you're like, as you said, you're in a room with them, and they're interacting with you and being like, hey, Matthew, like normal, right? Like, I've had a privilege to meet a lot of famous people in my life as well, but not in the sports arena like you, but in like actors and musicians and stuff. And they're just ordinary people, right? But right. They get like made up into these images. And the one thing I've noticed the most is that they like to be treated as normal people. They don't like that thing. Like, you can't be, if you're like starstruck, like, oh, you're the best. Like, you're
Right.
just like, ugh, like, and you see with like the Last Dance with Jordan, it's like, man, like he was saying, like, yeah, being Jordan, like I want to be like Mike, right? Being like Mike for, he goes like, for one day, cool. For maybe 2, 3 days, it's awesome. But being like Mike every day, where when the minute he comes out of his hotel room, there's 1,000 people there. The minute he goes to anywhere, he walks down the street, anything, there's people screaming, and besides the million microphones all the time trying to get an
Yeah.
interview, it's just like it never. You can't turn it off, right? There's no off button
Right.
to it.
Right.
So I think
But
that
that's but
that's
that story is also an indication of competitiveness and how it doesn't go away even when you retire, right? And you mentioned the Jordan doc, and to this day, he's upset at Isaiah Thomas because he didn't shake his hand after he beat him in a series
sure,
in like
sure,
the early '90s, and that's part of what makes a team or somebody special is just you want it more than somebody else, and it's not just about you want it more than somebody else on that day. It's about putting in all the work to get to that point to get over the top or to be better than somebody else. And I think that uh, that these types that docu series or that anecdote really kind of illustrates what people will do to get to where they need to be.
yeah, for sure. So, what would you say is being around all these guys is great? Like, what makes a winner? Like, what's in your view? You've been blessed with these opportunities and created these opportunities for yourself, but around these celebrity sports stars, what makes a winner?
Well, I think you have this "I can't lose" kind of mentality, and the one thing that I think you see is it's not just good enough for them to be a professional. They get annoyed, they get upset, or it angers them, or it drives them to a further point if they're not the best, or if they're not on the team that's the best. I interviewed a guy a few years ago named Herm Winningham, and Herm Winningham isn't famous for being a player at all. Herm Winningham is famous for being in a trade that brought Gary Carter to the Mets from the Expos, backup outfielder, nothing special. But I interviewed him because it was just to find out what his experience was like in Montreal. But he so happened to also be a member of the 1990 World Series champion Cincinnati Reds. They were famous for the nasty boys. They had these, relievers that threw 100 miles an hour, and they had this quirky third baseman named Chris Sabo who wore like goggles. But Herm Winningham was a player on that team, and I asked him. I said, you were on that World Series team, and you were on the Expos in the '80s when they had these great teams, but they never made the playoffs and never got there. What did you find was the difference? And it kind of surprised me, the answer. I thought maybe he'd point to, well, management didn't get us this extra player, or this guy didn't want it bad enough, or it was really surprising. He said, well, on the Cincinnati Reds teams, we our families after the game, we'd get together, we'd go to people's houses, we'd have barbecues. We were really close knit, and I found that when we were on the Expos after the game, we had a whole bunch of cliques or groups where people would go their separate ways, and it really wasn't that same sense of family. So I think a lot of success in team sport is also about building that chemistry and caring about the guy next to you and wanting to do something because he means a lot to you, right? Like we talked about that story of beating a player, hitting a batter because his teammate was shown up, right? And Billy wanted to protect his buddy or to have his back. So I think a lot of that is also the leaders on these teams, Jordan and the Bulls or any of these other teams, they're pushing their teammates to be better, but they're also bringing them into their inner circle, and they're developing this kind of family atmosphere. And I always marvel at how they do it in football, right? Because you got a 52-man roster, right? And how could Tom Brady know who the heck the long snapper is, who's only on the field for field goals and punts, right? He has to. Everyone has to know everyone else. They all have to work together, and I think that's a big part of team sports that people don't really talk about it a lot. And baseball, you don't think of chemistry being an issue in baseball, right? Because it's you can show up and join a team and play third and hit, and you don't need to know a playbook, and you know what I mean. So it was interesting to hear that, just to know that was part of the reason that they got there, is because they cared about each other, and wanted to battle hard, just maybe even a tiny bit harder for their teammate than maybe some of the teams that guy played on previously.
Yeah, very interesting. We hear that in hockey, they often say they make the comparison between North American players and then split that even into Canadians versus, or even if you want to go further, triaging Quebecers, but Canadians, Americans, and then North Americans in general versus European players, where the European
Right.
players are known to have great seasons and then just do nothing in the playoffs, right? And then, like,
Right.
why?
In some occasions, I think that's changed a lot in the last few years. But again, you got to acclimate these people, and in a sport like hockey, it really is incumbent upon the leadership of a group of the leadership group of a team to form those bonds, to have those team dinners, to have those outings in a chalet before the season starts, to make the guy from Finland who speaks like 9 words of English, to feel a part of the team. And yeah, I think that's exactly right. Is some guys come over and they having played in their native country, and have to different size rink, slightly different rules, different language, different culture, sometimes different weather, and different elements to deal with outside of the sport of hockey. So it really is about that leadership. People talk about Mark Messier as being one of the greatest leaders in the history of sports, and he played for the Oilers, he played for the Canucks, but he's most known for playing for the Rangers and bringing them a cup in 1994. Played obviously with Gretzky in the 80s with the Oilers too, but the aura and the legend of players grows as, I think, the teammates help to build it. Right? Somebody scores 100 points, he's not necessarily going to be talked about 20, 30 years later in hockey by fans, as much as a guy who his teammates talked about him in interviews and in DVDs and other specials. Like, that guy was the reason that we got over. Mark Messier is famous for making a prediction. I think it's 1994 Eastern Conference Finals against the Devils, and he says we're going to win this game and win it in Game 7 or something to that effect. And he guaranteed a victory, and it was all over the New York Post and the New York Times, and sure enough, they did it, and they went on and they won the cup for the first time in 50 years for the Rangers. There's an innate quality inside some of these gifted athletes. All these guys are gifted to a certain point to get to that level, but there's an innate quality that some guys have just to be able to bring everyone else up a level, or to inspire them to do a little more. It's not just about the coach and a fiery speech. It's about following the leadership of some of these guys. You look at some teams that in all sports that didn't get over the hump, and people say, well, it's because the other team was better. Sometimes it's just because their leadership group, their 2, 3, 4 veterans that are their best players, weren't leading the way, or they weren't able to bring up the next guy. So there's a ton of
Yeah.
psychology and leadership qualities to sports.
Yeah, that's very well said. Very well said. We see that also in Last Dance, where you brought up with Isaiah Thomas and how they were getting physically beaten. The Bulls, they were losing because they're getting physically pushed around, and then they show in the documentary how Jordan says, "Okay, this is what we're going to do." He put on 20 pounds of muscle basically, and then he got his teammates to say, "Okay, we're gonna practice in the off season," and he got them all to agree to that. Right? That's, as you said, that's leadership, that quality that, so any of them could have said no, right? They could have said, "No, man, I'm just gonna, play golf like he loves to do," but they
Right.
didn't, right? They went together, and they, as one unit, playing as one unit is so strong. We see that in so many sports. I wanted to ask you another question that's always been on my mind is, like, I know we had Montreal Impact here, okay, but why do you think that soccer is just not as popular in North America as it is in the rest of the world? You have fit in, it's so huge. And there's this because I just saw there's a documentary, FC Barcelona, right? There's
Mm.
on Netflix. It's just, I haven't watched it yet. This and Messi and just so big, and people are so into soccer. I mean, I know tons of people, and I'm sure you do too. But somehow here, it's not the same. And do you have
Yeah.
is there an answer for that?
Yeah, I think there is. I think, and you can go back to, I think it was 1994. The U.S. hosted the World Cup in '94. I think it was, and we were, you and I were in high school. I remember a lot of people were excited that played soccer. I played soccer as a kid. I like playing the sport. I don't, admittedly, I don't watch a lot of it. I actually prefer women's soccer to men's soccer. I can't stand when a guy goes down like a ton of bricks and then he's up again in a minute.
Yeah,
I just,
like an Oliver Balliani with the blood pack, the ketchup pack to fake blood going down.
yeah, we had a, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, we had a classmate who in the schoolyard went down and pulled out a ketchup packet pretending his nose was broken, and that was pretty funny. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
the overacting, the going down with the phantom
yeah, and
falling.
and women almost want to prove that they're worth watching, or that they are as good as the men or better, or whatever the case may be. But they don't do that. They don't roll around in
Yeah,
agony and fake it.
but
And so I
that's the
kind of like
rules.
that.
That's yeah, but that's the I think that I don't believe I looked at that first and you're like, wow, that's really just so silly and so dumb, especially these phantom things where the guy's rolling over and no one even actually touched him. It's just crazy. But then you think, it's the rules. If the guy's gonna, he does that, there should be, like in hockey with diving, like
Yeah,
a diving penalty. So it's like if you
yeah.
do that, and they should like video replay it, and then you guys should get a severe penalty if you're faking that, and they just
Yeah,
don't have.
and they've tried to clamp down, and they do a little bit of that. It's better than they used to, for sure. But I think, just going back to your initial question, I think what happened was, for soccer, is, North America, especially Americans, there's a lot of pride, a lot of patriotism in their sports, right? American flag and hot dogs in the summer for, baseball, take me out of the ball game, football, Friday night lights, and it's about their culture. It's part of lifestyle in the US. And I think when soccer comes in and they try and impose their culture, European culture, on the US, I think that's where maybe the general or the casual sports fan in the US, and even in Montreal, didn't really gravitate to it initially. It's like, okay, well, I'm not used to going to a sporting event and banging and hearing banging drums for 2 hours. I find that annoying, right? Or like, we just talked about the diving thing. We're from a culture that embraces hockey, and there used to be a ton of hockey fights, and you body check a guy, and the guy gets right back up and hits you in the mouth, right? And there's CFL football here, and same kind of thing. It's a tough sport, so I think they weren't trying to fit into the culture of where they were trying to, capture the imagination of the fans. They were saying, hey, this is the game that's popular in all the rest of the world, for so you guys should get on board. It's great. And I just don't think they adjusted enough. And they're getting better at it now. There's a lot of places, particularly in the US, that draw very well for soccer. LA's got two teams, for example. I think Dallas, if I'm not mistaken, draws fairly well. I know in the Northwest, Seattle does incredibly well for soccer. But as it relates to Montreal as well, it's hard when, it was all the craze when they brought in a big star, Drogba, a few years ago. If you're used to watching Premiership on television, or UK soccer, England soccer, France, it's hard to then watch a slightly inferior product, because all those stars aren't playing in the US. So I think there's a few factors to that. But I do think that they've made a lot of inroads. Like, for example, I'll give you an example perfectly, that fits here, Andrew, is Nashville in hockey, right? And they didn't try and impose hockey on Nashville. They adjusted to, they embraced country music in the arena during games, concerts, stuff like that. I think it's in Carolina, right, where they, part of the tradition, or maybe it's Nashville, where they smash like a NASCAR outside. Everyone takes a swing. They put it in the colors of the opposing team, and everyone takes like a hammer and bashes it. Right? That's not hockey coming to one of these markets. That's the market making hockey their own. And I think that's what a lot of these places, maybe even Montreal, where we are, hasn't done enough of.
Right, right. That's good. That's a very good point. Okay. On that note, Matthew, is there any last words of wisdom you want to share with the listener right now? Having interviewed so many people, knowing sports so well, knowing diverse, different sports. So, like, what makes somebody successful and famous. You talked about this team and being supporting your teammate and having that on field, off field, or on the ice and off the ice relationship, and how important that is. And just, and we saw the Jordan documentary, like what it is, the heart of a winner, the competitive soul. But seeing all these guys, can you choose now? Like, could you, like, I guess there's two questions. One is like just your general feedback on that, and two, could you look at a rookie and interview him and go, he's a winner, like he's gonna be something.
Well, yeah, I mean it's interesting because you can look at young players and they have yeah, for sure it's the way you carry yourself. And everybody's got talent if they're at this level. It's a question of how much work they put in and how they carry themselves and how confident they
Hey, what
are.
happened to side note? What happened to Pat Falloon?
That's a random name.
Just I remember, I remember his hockey card was like rookie sensation hockey card, and then just
Right. There's so many like that. I think Pat Falloon was like early '90s, like San Jose or something, first round pick or something, right? Hockey, and yeah, it's sometimes it's just you plateau at a certain level of ability, and you can do it in one level and you just can't do it to another. There's in baseball there's a term for that. They call them 4A players, right? So it's like in baseball there's double A, single A, there's triple A, and then you get to the majors, right? And so there's guys that are amazing in triple A and they just can't do it in the major leagues, but they're too good for triple A. So they kind of they call those guys like like in betweeners or like 4A players. So yeah, it's always befuddling. But before we go, I do want to ask you something because kind of flip it on you is the music thing, and we were talking about chemistry. Everyone knows how to play an instrument, but in a band, for example, can you just go into a studio and practice, or you really need to be best friends with the guy and get to know him and kind of for it to translate into the next level for music?
it's a great question. Synergy between band members is very important at the beginning, but through time, most bands and most producers that work together end up hating each other. And this is where you see like um, so many examples. Let's say Pink Floyd, Roger Waters and David Gilmour, my most favorite band of all time. Somebody offered them many years ago, this very, very wealthy guy offered them £100 million to get back together. And they were like, no, no thanks. Like, like that's how much you got to hate someone like a lot, right? Just to like, to turn down $100 million. That's hate. That's not dislike. That is the definition of hate. I can tell you so many examples of other people I know, producers and bands that work together, that play together and hate each other. And like they get off stage and they hate each other, but when they're on stage, you wouldn't know it. It's not like sports in the sense that they're so good at their instrument and they know the songs. I think you could play a song very well, but composing and it needs to be worked together, right? Because otherwise,
Right.
the bassist wants to be the loudest or the most prominent track is the bass line, and then the lead guitarist and then the vocals. And they say that when you're a good music producer, everybody that's on the track thinks that their track is the loudest. That's how you have a good mix. They all think that in their mind that they're the loudest on the track.
Nice.
Which is hard to obtain. But yeah, that's something I think that I had that experience too when you talked about it hit home when you talked about when everyone goes out together, when everyone has that bonding. There was one experience once with a singer, and we were playing a show, and the singer's boyfriend just showed up at the last second, and she went with him to go have dinner or whatever, and she came back, and the show didn't go that well because she wasn't on the same wavelength. We were like trying to be all together so we could be all on the same wavelength and deliver that show.
Right.
But she was off
Right.
on her own, and when she came back, she couldn't really match. It's kind of like when we're like you and I are having a conversation right now, and then suddenly one of our good friends like jumps in, right? The nature of our conversation changes. It'll change drastically,
Sure.
usually towards wrestling for some reason or something, but it'll change, So it's that kind of nature. And the way I look at things is through the view of music, so that everybody is a musical note, and everyone has their vibration. So that's when you have a good team together. It's like a good song, right? Where everyone's in key, in tune together. So everyone doesn't it doesn't work when everyone's the same note. Like if you play like a guitar and you play like C, and then on a piano you hit the C note, and the other guy's a piano and he hits this, and everyone hits a C note at the same time over and over. It's terrible. You can't, you know what I mean? That's
Right.
not a song. It's
Right.
about playing all this music and the space in between and all that. And I think that's also when you talk about the supporting players, how important that is.
Mm.
And if you have a
Mhm.
band and you have 5 lead singers singing at the same time, that's going to be terrible, right? If you have
Yeah.
like 4 drummers and 1 bassist, that's also going to be
Yeah.
terrible. It's like you have to have this balance. So I think in certain
Yeah.
things like a rock band or an orchestra, there's kind of like
Yeah.
these rules of what's good. But on a team, it's sometimes you can't have whenever if you have 3 people who are fighting to be that lead star. That's where Jordan, took over, and he's like, "Hey, Pippin's amazing, and Pippin could have been a star in any other team." But you have that Jordan and Pippin chemistry, and then you have Oates and Hull, and there's so many different,
Right. Right. Right.
Jerry Rice and Montana Rice, right? And well, that's different, I guess. But people that complement and keep people that help each other through that. So yeah, I think that it is interesting. I say
Yeah. It's different.
yeah, I say quite a lot because I mean your view, your life, you're able to make analogies through that filter of sports because you know sports so well. And I don't know sports very well at all, but I know music that well. So I start filtering life through through music.
Well, you were a good badminton player.
I was okay. I was okay. I played basketball a lot. I played soccer growing
Yeah,
up
you did.
for years.
Yeah.
I played basketball at one point. I mean, we used to play. We were so into basketball. We used to play. Wake up in the morning, play before school, play at lunch, play after school,
Yep.
go home, have dinner, and play after dinner. We were like really, really good at that time. So yeah, you get these passions and these obsessions and stuff like that. But that was it was great. It was like a hobby. I was never going to be any basketball star. I was great for a home court game, let's say, right?
Right. Right.
It
Right.
wasn't my passion. Couldn't get where I needed to be. Whereas music, I could. I saw that I could, and I did get where I wanted to go. Which is cool. So thanks for asking that. So any closing thoughts?
No, I think that's the great way to end it. Enjoyed this chat. It went by really quick. You said it would go. You said, "Hey, let's do an hour." I said, "An hour? Are you crazy?" Or I don't know how long it's been. I don't have a watch on me, but
It's been about an hour.
and
It's been about an
then
hour. Yeah.
nice, and then lo and behold, yeah, true to your word.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. Okay, Matthew, listen, thank you so much for doing this interview with me and sharing your unique perspective on sporting world and what it takes to be a winner. And yeah, just amazing stuff. And I'm sure that the listener will really appreciate it. So thanks again, and I wish you a wonderful day. And we'll talk super soon.
All right, thanks.
Okay, later, Matthew. Okay, ciao. Man.